This is Nan McKay, and I would like to introduce you today to Leslie Streeter. Our lives take turns and twists, and that was certainly true for Leslie. Leslie was in the middle of living her fairy tale when suddenly everything changed. Leslie, tell us more.
Well, I was living in West Palm Beach, Florida, where I was a columnist for the Palm Beach Post. I had lived there it was a total of 18 years when I left. At that point, I'd been there like 13 years. I was married to a really cool guy that I had met when I was in high school, but didn't get back together with for 20 years, named Scott. We had a new person in our house. He was a little boy who was a member of my family who needed someone to take care of him. So we had become his foster parents and were in process of finalizing the adoption. And then very early on July 29th, 2015, my husband had a heart attack and died pretty suddenly. And everything just, you say everything changed and it seems like a cliche. It's like, I had to buy a new car and everything changed. Or like, I tried a different lipstick and my whole life changed. This is absolutely the thing that you don't plan for that changed absolutely everything in my life.
Well, how old were you and how old was he?
I was 44 and he was 44 going on 45. He would have been 45 in about a month.
That is awfully young.
Weird.
And not something anyone would expect. Now, you were in the process of adopting a child. So tell me more about that. I mean, did you continue on with it or what happened?
Well, absolutely. Basically what happened was we got married at 38 and 39. Tried to have children biologically. It didn't happen. So we started, and we had a lot of loss and things in our lives, like parents and grandparents, and there was some job stuff with him. And so we decided, you know what, we're just gonna see what happens. We signed up to adopt from foster care, like a child whose parental rights had already been relinquished, probably gonna be an older child. We took the classes, got our home study, and then we moved from my condo that I sold to a house. And then in the meantime, we were waiting to get things together to do the next home study. And we got this phone call about this baby that was in Baltimore, who, like I said, was born into my family and needed some place to go. And we were like, okay. So it took us several months to get him. We visited every month I'm in Baltimore again, but from West Palm Beach to here. And we were just, he had lived with us, by the time Scott died, he lived with us for about a year and a half. He is just the most awesome thing in the world. So I, in the middle of all my grief and all, had to finish the adoption on my own, including things like, it was just my name now on it. It wasn't me and Scott. And that was, every time I had to sign a piece of paper that was just me and without Scott's name, I was like, ugh. But yeah, it was done almost a year to the day of Scott's death. Scott died on July 29th, 2015, and the adoption was done on July 21st, 2016. So I think God did it so late July wouldn't suck all the time. But like, here's a good thing, here's a bad thing.
So what went through your head as you came through the shock? I mean, it must have been a tremendous shock to your system.
It's weird because big questions loom in your head and like small things. Like it'll be like, oh my gosh, do I have to go from the married box to the widowed box now? What even is that widowed box? Am I a single parent now? I guess I am. And then stuff like, am I hungry? Do I have to send thank you cards, or do people just expect that I'm busy because I'm crying? The weirdest thing happens. And I don't know if you've been through significant losses, but when any kind of trauma happens, you just have these like big, huge movie questions, like what is life? And then you have like, do I join a gym again? Do I have to do anything? Do I have to talk to people I want to talk to? Stuff like that. So I think you really do consider your life and reconsider your life in both big and small ways then.
Now, your husband was Jewish. How did you honor his memory, which I think you felt was important?
Oh, absolutely. It was really cool. We had friends who explained, like, we did not do a formal shiva, but he was buried in a Jewish cemetery. We had a Jewish funeral mostly. We had the rabbi and people give remarks. My aunt and uncle, who were Baptist ministers, also gave remarks. And then his cousin, who was Jewish, did like a sing along to the Jeffersons, which is not Orthodox or whatever in any way. But we did, he had a friend who did the Kiddush, and who observed that over the time. We did a headstone unveiling, although his headstone has a quote from wrestler Dusty Rhodes on it, because that's what he wanted. And I never converted, and I'm not raising Brooks, who was our son, explicitly Jewish, but we have participated in, for years before we moved, the Jewish high holidays with friends who we used to go to with Scott and who continued. And I just, the beautiful thing that said, may his memory be a blessing, which is what, it's said often when Jewish people are mourning to each other, I think is so beautiful, because it talks about making that person's memory active and a good thing. Because often I think that we, in some parts of society, go, it's sad, I don't want to think about it. It makes me sad to talk about that person. And they're like, may his memory be a blessing to you. May it be a good thing to you. May you wake up in the morning and say, something good happened because this person was in my life, and not, I don't like the way it ended and the way they left that. But it's such a beautiful, hopeful, and very appropriate way to remember someone.
Well, it seems like you have been able to do that. And I think it's wise, because I don't know that lessens it, the grief. You said there's no stages of grief. Is that what you meant by that? Or
well, here's what I said. And it's funny because I've done a TV show with David Kessler, who was one of the writers of one of those books about the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross books. He did the second one. And so what I said is that, first of all, the stages of grief were never meant to be specifically about death and accepting the death of a person. They were meant to be about accepting the fact that you had a terminal illness. So when we look at those things, there's some that don't, like we say acceptance. It's like, okay, bargaining. It's like, who are you bargaining with? They're already dead, so it's a different thing. When you're ill, it's okay, if I do this, will you cure me? If I do this, will the universe let me live or get better, or that kind of thing. It's a different thing. What I meant in my book was that A, they were not specifically meant to apply to death, and B, that they were never meant to be linear. I think there's a disservice done to people because they tell you you're doing grief wrong. When you read it like, first I start here, and then I go there, and then I go there. And if I feel like I have to go back a step, then I'm doing it wrong. I'm not grieving right. I'm failing grief. And you can't fail grief. I mean, it's not a test. It's not, it was never meant to be. And I think that when people understand the difference between mourning and grief, that mourning is the outward expression of your grief and grief is the inward expression of what you feel of the loss, then they understand that those are two completely different things. And the grief part was never meant to be for public consumption in terms of, I don't get to be sad anymore, or I'm not going to cry, when I hear our song, or I'm not going to be a little jealous of my friends who are in, marriages with people who are breathing, it happened to me a couple of New Years after Scott died. My twin sister and my best friend and I were all married the same year. And we had a New Year's thing, just old people hanging out at my sister's house. And at New Year's, everybody, the two of them kissed their husbands, and I went and kissed my baby and went, I feel stupid, because he was supposed to be there. We were supposed to be celebrating this, the six of us who'd all got married the same year together, and he wasn't. I went into her guest room and cried, and nobody was mad at me. Everyone knew that I was uncomfortable. But I never would have said, don't be happy in my face. I removed myself. I cried a little. I came back, and it was fine. And they weren't like making out with each other on purpose just to make me mad. They just were existing in their lives. And I think that my grief will pop up in ways that you expect and don't expect. And there's no shame in saying there's a moment where, your healing is a great thing. And I believe that you heal. I'm not in the same place I was 6 years ago or 3 years ago or a year ago. But I think also that there'll be moments where something will happen and you're right back in that place for just a minute. And it's like, it happens all again. Or you'll have a dream where they're alive. You wake up and go, oh, that's right, they're dead.
Well, what advice do you have for others who've lost their partner suddenly?
I think take it easy on yourself. I think is the best thing, because there are all these expectations. They're both like when it first happens, particularly if it's unexpected, like you said, it's I got to plan this thing. I got to invite these people. I got to call people. I have to like function in society when I'm falling apart. And that's one set of expectations. And then there's the expectation of then when everyone goes home, then I know where the insurance paperwork is. And then I got to cancel his credit cards. And then I got to, like I did, send his car back, and call the bank and all that stuff. And it's so overwhelming. And that's just the paperwork. It's not how am I going to function when I turn over and the person who's supposed to be in the bed next to me isn't, or even where, we had plans, he was turning 45 and we had plans to go to Key West for his birthday, canceling stuff and doing all that and dealing with these milestones that come. And he's like his birthday or Christmas or Hanukkah or the adoption or whatever, and they're not there. And I would just say, take it as it comes. Do the things that you have to do. Get help. If you have help and support of people who will make those phone calls for you, who will drive things back to the store for you, who will help you clean up and do things, because you don't have to do that stuff. The rest of the work is on you of the emotional healing work. Getting therapy is an excellent idea. I stand by it, whether it's for a licensed therapeutic professional or your pastor or rabbi or imam or whoever it is that you go to, not just your mom, not just your best friend, but someone who has experience in dealing with this sort of not as your friend or whatever. And just like I said, just to let it happen. Don't put parameters on it or say, but in 2 months, I am going to feel this, because you have no idea. Or in 6 months, I will feel completely better, or no, or I'll be ready to travel by myself. Or I have a friend who lost her dad, different situation, but the grief is still the grief. And she thought, I don't want to travel or do anything. And she got an opportunity to do something for work, and she just jumped at it. She jumped at it, and it changed her life, because she would have told herself a week before, I'm not going to do that. I'm not interested. I just want to stay home and deal with my grief. And just let yourself be in the moment. Stay in the moment. Stay in what you are feeling. Asking for help is great. Learning to accept help is really great. Not easy. Yeah, that would be my advice.
My husband and I have been together, I forget if it's 52 or 53 years, but it's a long time. Mm-hmm. And I think about if something happened to him, what would I do? Would I go ahead and just say, all right, I'm cleaning everything out, I'm going to start all over? Or would I leave it there for a period of time? Does it come to you? Do you know what to do when
I don't. And I think that, like, for me, we were married 5.5 years. And once again, I had no idea. We had plans, like I said, we had his birthday party planned. And, we were planning to buy a house in the next year. My mother had planned to move and actually had movers booked to move near us, not with us, but near us from Arkansas. My dad died in 2012, and she was moving down 3 years later, selling her house, doing stuff. And I had already planned to like help her move and all that stuff. And then Scott died and everything happened at once. So I just didn't know. I mean, I had this plan that we'd say, and we were renting a house, and then we were preparing to buy. I'd owned a condo, sold it, renting a house, then preparing to buy a house. And so I had all these ideas and a timeline, and then all that blew up. And then I thought, okay, the first thought was, do I move now from this house where all these memories? And I said, no, I feel comfortable here. And then our landlord sold a house in February of the next year. So my mother and I had to move. So we found this lovely place that we rented, considered buying it, and then decided we weren't going to stay in Florida forever. So we didn't. But things come when they come. You feel differently. Different things happen. Different streams of income or support or consciousness come in, and you have these ideas where you go, I will never do this. I'll never move. I'm going to move. I'm going to leave. I'm going to start all over in an eat, pray, love kind of a way, and it's hard to do that too, to have this complete clean break, like that. So, it's hard. But no, you can never know. Like I said, you can have a plan, just know the plan probably will deviate.
Hmm.
Either it happens to you or you decide you want to deviate from it because you have a different thought. And it's okay to change your mind about it.
So how have you put the pieces back together?
I think that for me, I had a combination of immediate different and immediate same. That my mom moved down, so suddenly, I'm this 44-year-old woman living with her mom. It's like, what? And I'm functioning as a single mother with help, but I had the same job, and then we had to move houses, but we literally moved a mile away. So it wasn't that big a deal. So it was small changes. My job remained the same, things remained the same. Then, that was 2016 we moved. 4 years later, I'm about to launch a book and stuff. And then COVID happens and you're like, what do you do? In the meantime, the newspaper I worked for was not doing great. And then they were sold. And then we were furloughed once a month for a week for 3 months. And that was in the middle of COVID. And by the third one, I thought, yeah, I'm not doing this anymore. So we had thought about moving, and I talked to my financial advisor and said, how would you feel if I took out of my 401k, quit my job, and moved to Baltimore? And he was like, do it. And he said, Nan, you'd love this. A year ago, I never would have given you that advice, ever. But I know the state of your place of employment. And then they did have buyouts after I left. I know the state of the world, with COVID and, just political stuff and whatever. And he goes, you have your money. It's your money. And at that point I had only a certain amount of time to do it to the end of the year. So I wouldn't pay that extra penalty because of the hardship thing from the 401k. And he's like, do it. And I did it. And we moved here July 15th. We took the auto train, got off the train July 16th, and we closed in this house on August 29th. So it was really, really fast. And it was really great. It was, if I'd had time to think, if it was a normal time, not a pandemic, that's a really quick time to move and make a decision, right? And buy a house. But I'd also done some research. My sister had looked at some houses for me. She lives in Annapolis, not far from here. So basically I picked up the pieces in, like I said, in very drastic ways and in very small ways. But I think that I had enough time to get to know the rhythm of my own capability. So when I had to hit the ground running, when the crisis happened, I was able to go, let's go. I'm prepared. I have the money. I've already started talking to people. I know where I want to look. I've already have a realtor who's looking for me. And we had already had these changes, even though, I thought, oh, we have this big book tour and I'll be able to tour and do whatever I want. It did not make the money that I wanted it to. It's doing okay, but not like huge gangbusters. I was supposed to do all the stuff and a tour. Did not happen, at least not in person. But I just kind of went with it. Also, I think it helped that everyone else was going through that as well. Everyone was making adjustments to their lives. So I think that at least for a little while, there was sort of a grace extended that people extended. So.
Well, how would you say that you're different today than you were before you wrote the book?
Oh my gosh. And I know this absolutely. I am a lot more resolute in my abilities to say no and mean it. I'm a lot more resolute in knowing my own mind and not feeling that I have to explain, because when you survive something like this and you do it, you can do it. So also, that time is fleeting. So you don't spend a lot of time, this is pre-pandemic, it's even more so now, but you don't spend a lot of time going, I don't really want to go to this thing I'm invited to, but they're so nice and whatever. You go, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm not interested. No, as my therapist and other people have said to me, is a complete sentence. No, period. I don't, you know what I'm saying? Because we do this as women, right? Where we go, we come up, how can I explain? It's like they ask you, would you like to come? And you go, well, see, I'm picking someone up from the airport, whatever. Like, why do I have to give you explanations for not wanting to do what you asked me to do? You asked me, and I said no, and no should be enough. And if you weren't, mature enough to accept my no, why did you ask me? So there we are. So I'm much better at that because I just, I'm not going to say a friend of mine refers to it, I've lost the ability to give a, what, because I think that happens with age. I just turned 50 this year, so I don't care anymore. I mean, I'm always polite about it. I'm always like, thank you for asking me. I really appreciate it. Also, I have learned now in this part of my life where I am freelancing and am, hunting and fishing for my own food, so to speak. I am a lot more likely to ask for money, to ask for the money that I know that I deserve, to not him and haw a lot about an opportunity where I'm not sure how it's going to benefit me, and not apologize for it.
That is really interesting. That's really interesting. What do you think was the biggest hurdle that you had to overcome to get to where you are today with being able to say no and being able to have that as a complete sentence? What was the biggest one?
You know what it is? It was looking back at the time that I wasted him and hawing about stuff that I shouldn't have done. It's the time that I spent resenting things I said yes to and resenting being there because I knew that I shouldn't have. And it was easier at the time to not let someone down than be true to myself and say I didn't want to do that. And then you're annoyed and they're weird about it because why are you here? And it's nobody wants that. So I think that I learned the hard way by making stupid decisions, or at least the wrong decisions, and then realizing it's so much easier because 85% of the time, they go, absolutely, thanks for asking. 10% of the time, they're like, oh, are you sure? They ask one more time and you say, no, thank you. 5% of the time, the jerks about it. You can't worry about those people. You can't worry about that.
I think that's just terrific advice and so interesting on how you got there, how you worked through it. What do you think you've done, or how do you feel that you've made a difference for women today?
Oh my goodness. And it's weird to say that this is another thing I've learned in my life is that it's okay to pat yourself on the back or say definitively that you've done something good without being self-deprecating and go, but also I snort milk out of my nose. No, you can just say I did good things for people and not have to explain them away. I've gotten good at that too, not being self-deprecating. What I know I have done for women particularly, I think mostly for grieving people, but particularly for women, is to say that you can do this. You can survive things. You can ask for help and accept help. Your life doesn't have to be over because life as you knew it ended, and if you can get yourself up, you can go, you can move forward. And I've had so many people, the consistent thing and what I get when people, particularly who've read my book, say that I taught them by example, it's okay to laugh even when crappy things are happening to you. It's okay to have hope. It's okay not to be maudlin all the time. It's okay not to ask for permission to feel happy, because my book is funny. It's very sad, obviously, but it's also funny because I didn't stop being me, who's a pretty funny person, when that horrible thing happened to me. And I think just leading by example and being willing to, people would say, you don't know me, but can you call my sister who lost her husband, or can you email her, or can you give her a like on Twitter, or whatever it is, and I'm willing to do that because people reach out to me, and amazing people, some very well known, some just people who wrote me a letter were incredibly willing to reach out to me. And I've tried to pay that forward and will forever.
And I feel like perhaps one other thing that you're saying is that you may be stronger than you think you are.
Oh, completely. You are, because I never knew, because there are all these songs about, no, I think I'm strong and whatever. And then you never want to be tested, you never want that tested. And it was tested and I passed it. There's actually a song by the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones that says, I'm not a coward. I've just never been tested. I like to think that if I was, I would pass. It's like, yes. And I did. No one ever wants to have to pass that test. And I did. And I think that we are stronger than we think we are. Nobody wants to think that they're going to have to get through or survive something like that. But I think that you are stronger than you think you are. You have maybe hopefully support that you didn't know you have. The people that you have in your life hopefully will follow through and be that for you. And you can do this.
If you think back, what would be the top 3 takeaways that you would like to have people to have gotten from this interview?
Oh my gosh. I think, first of all, that approaching things with a sense of humor is a correct thing to do, whether or not other people think it is. I think that it is okay not to know how your life is going to end. I mean, it's great to have a plan, but it's good to know that it's going to deviate. And I think that it's also good to remember the the people that you've lost in your life in totality, neither as a villain or as a saint, but who they are, and to have that memory feed you going forward, and to be able to talk about them when it's appropriate, and to be able to look at pictures of them, and to not creep people out, because it doesn't matter, honestly, at the end of the day, how people feel about that. And I think it's just, what I'd like to say to people is, if you're widowed, you're always gonna be that person's widow. Even if you marry someone else and are happy for the rest of your life, that person's loss will always be a fact in your life. And it's okay to accept that and honor that life that you have, because it wasn't the life that you had for the most part that was bad, it's just the way that ended. The life part, my life was great. It's just the ending sucked, and it's okay to remember that.
Well, I think people will be excited to read your book. They'll be able to purchase it right from our website, because we will have it right on the full page write-up.
Amazing.
Why don't you give the name of it anyway, so people can buy it right away if they want?
Awesome. My book is called Black Widow, A Sad, Funny Journey Through Grief for People Who Normally Avoid Books with Words Like Journey in the title.
And are you going to do a course, or are you going to do something like that? You thought about?
Well, I've done all kinds of things in terms of, I have some things that I have started setting up to do in terms of like webinars and that kind of thing. Lately, it's been so busy, and I started writing a webinar to promote another thing that I do, which is book coaching, writing coaching, that kind of thing. And I just have not had the chance to do it because all these opportunities have come up to do it, but it is something I would definitely like to do. And I started writing it, and it's like, oh, then I got all these jobs. It's like, oh, I don't have time to do that right now, literally. So yeah, and I love those, honestly. I think that this whole wave of courses and webinars and stuff, particularly for those of us who in the last 18 months, 19 months have been at home, is such a really great lower cost way of just expanding things. And I've been able to be introduced to so many people like yourself through things like Power Professionals or, other groups, because you're all trying to do the same thing. You're doing different things, but you're always all trying to get to the same place professionally, which is to get your message out there and to help more people, and to send this sounds cheesy, but send your light out into the world. You know what I'm saying? You just want to have people see what you've got. And so those are really great ways to do it.
Well, it's just been such fun talking with you. It's been inspirational, because I think it's the big thing that everybody may dread, or at least I certainly do. And yet it's so good to see how you've gotten through it and what advice you have for other people. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
I just think, as we go into the holidays, and, we're still dealing with COVID, and we're still dealing with, things happening in the world. I think it's just giving yourself permission to not know everything, giving yourself permission to say, today I'm going to focus on the next couple of weeks, and then I'm going to focus on that. I'm going to focus on that. Because like the beginning of the summer, I know I had all these grand plans. We're going to do all this travel, whatever. Didn't happen. And we have to learn to kind of just not accept that crappy things are going to happen. Like your life will suck always, but just kind of accept that we don't know, and be joyful in the things that we know about. And if we have to make those plans, if we have to change those plans, we will change them, and we will do something else. But we will not let things steal our ability to be happy about things.
Well, we appreciate that and all of the good advice that you've given us. So thank you so much. And we wish you happiness and lots of luck in the next chapter.
Yay, I love that. I'll write something about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.